Welcome to A Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach with Mark Gellard and Candy Reid, sponsored by the ERT 300. Well, a warm welcome to Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach, and this is the moment that I know we have all been waiting for, the highlights of 2025, because I, Candy Reid, are today joined by one of the legends of the coaching world. It is Dave Macpherson. How about that for an introduction?
Hey, that's about as glowing as you can put it. Thank you so much. Legend, we use the term loosely, but thank you, Candy.
So, Dave, we have just had the good fortune to meet together. We've been meeting for AO Radio for the Australian Open. I had heard of you, of course I had, before, but I'd never met you. And we did seem to click, didn't we? We had a lot of fun doing quite a few matches. AO Radio, you can really get some personality across a little bit more than television. How did you enjoy it, firstly?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, it's a great bonding experience for the two broadcasters. We were in there in the bunker in the little booth there and watching the match and calling the matches and just sort of I just found it to be a great bonding experience with you, to get to know you personally, and we seem to enjoy each other's company and calling the matches, and our minds worked alike, like we were noticing the same things. And yeah, no, it was a thoroughly enjoyable experience, and not having to worry how my hair looked on the radio, was really nice.
Take your cap off quickly. Come on.
Yes, as they say, how we're joking. Yes.
There we go. There we go. All right,
I was
that's not
making
good
fun
for
of Carlos's haircut last night, and I was obviously doing it facetiously, seeing that I'm completely bald.
Yeah, that piece we've just done is not great for our listeners. It's better for our viewers on YouTube. So Dave doesn't have a lick of hair to his head, but he is a very handsome man, as you can all see if you're watching. Let's talk about then, as you brought it up, the Carlos Alcaraz Novak Djokovic match. Now, this is obviously going to date a little bit because this podcast will run in a week's time or so. But that was the headline match, wasn't it? The Australian Open 2025. It was the match that we were hoping for in the quarterfinals and got it. I actually did pick on another podcast that Novak was going to win it. Now, having said that, I also picked that Coco Gauff was going to beat Paula Badosa. So you can't always be right. But what did you think of Novak versus Carlitos?
We remember our victories and just put our losses to the side.
That is so true.
Well, I thought that the beginning of the match was really nervy. My goodness, both players could barely find their balance, and I know it was very windy. So it was probably a combination of the wind and just the nerves of such a big match, the respect that they have for each other. So it was a bit scrappy in the beginning, and we were a little bit worried about Novak at 5-4 in the first set. Oh boy, has he done something to himself? Are we going to see the full contest? But yes, I mean, I also thought that Novak would win that particular match. It's just Rod Laver to him is like Philippe Chatrier to Rafa, and
yes,
that's a powerful, powerful thing. And he's 37, but he wouldn't be out there playing if he didn't think he could win it. And of course, it seems like someone always gives him fuel to prove them wrong. And we had Tony Jones, the Channel 9 broadcaster, sort of disrespect him here during the tournament, and Novak probably should send him a bouquet of flowers for just adding that extra 2% that he might have needed to keep him going there when he was tired.
That's so interesting, isn't it, with Novak, because he does like fuel to the fire, like you said. He likes to pick someone out of the crowd or something that's happened and kind of slightly have that victim mentality, and I'm going to show you. Now, you've coached, we've got a little banner across the bottom here saying you've coached John Isner and, of course, the Bryan Brothers, the greatest doubles team of all time, currently working with Lee too as well. Have you seen that before in a player where they need something to get them to the next level or to get them over the line in a particular match? Is that something that's a familiar situation in tennis?
Oh, my word. I mean, gosh, when I was young, Johnny Mack used to always, if he was floundering, he'd make a fuss over a line call or something just to sort of get himself into a fever pitch of intensity. So he was a master at that. Jimmy Connors, in a different way, the same.
Yes.
So, yes, I mean, Novak, is just a maestro. He's a master of focusing and finding the fuel that he needs, because it's such a physical and mental brand that he has to uh, perform out there to beat these young superstars. So, I mean, just hats off to him. He's deservedly earned the title of GOAT these last 10 years. Who would have thought, when Roger was in full flight, that anyone would even come close to him? And then Rafa came along and was equally as amazing. And now Novak's even surpassed that. It's just beyond extraordinary.
It is bonkers. And you, of course, having been a professional and coached at the professional level, know just how tricky it is to get there. Can you give us some idea for those people perhaps tuning in who don't know a massive amount of tennis? They know they like to play it and perhaps watch it, but just detail how difficult it is to go from a beginning player all the way to the very, very top.
Oh gosh, well, I mean, to get to the very top, you have to have a passion for the game. I mean, you need God-given talent, obviously, but with that talent, you need some excellent early instruction to get your technique in order, because bad technique can really hamper you, and it's not easy to unlearn, as we've seen with some of the professionals. Even today, some of our great players have some suspect technique and here or there, and it's very difficult to overcome that and change it once you're entrenched in your ways. So
Yeah.
you need the talent that you're born into. You need the desire, the motivation, the environment to allow you to practice against good players and get that excellent technical coaching to get you started. And then once you become a pro, it's just incremental steps of building your confidence and climbing the ladder to number one, which is just such a it's such a noble journey, and I just respect everyone in our game that strives for excellence.
There's so many players, though, aren't there, Dave, that put their life's hard soul work into it and just do everything they can, and they still don't break the top 100. And there's not a huge amount of money, as we know, in that position.
No, yes, perhaps a lot of folks don't see the less glamorous side to tennis, where you're in a faraway country playing for peanuts, and the travel days are brutal, the practice days are relentless, and it's, yes, for the vast majority of the players, it's a very hard road, a very hard life. But for the privileged few that make it through to the Grand Slam level, where the prize money is awesome and the facilities are fantastic and the media is all around you, it's that those players certainly deserve it, because they had to go through a lot to get there.
So let's start now with your career. I believe you turned professional in the 80s, mid 80s, and you were a very good junior.
Yes, I probably peaked at about 16 years old.
I
In
did as
singles
well.
anyway. Yeah, no, oh gosh, yeah, I was a pretty good junior. Got a wild card into an Aussie Open, perhaps in '84, and went 12-10 in the fifth with a American named Fritz Buning. Had served for it at 5-4 in the fifth, and didn't quite put it away. And that was the end of my far from illustrious singles career. But sort of patched together a halfway decent doubles career in my later years.
Why did you decide then? And I love the fact that you remember what happened in that match, because tennis players do. They just recount things from sort of 20, 30 years ago. It's like elephants. They just never forget. But why did you then decide that singles maybe wasn't your thing and doubles was?
Well, I did give it a good go. I probably was still trying to make it in singles till I was about 22 or 23. But I'd gotten to the point where I was 300 in singles and 60 or 70 in doubles, because a normal week for me would be losing first or second round of singles and winning the doubles at the challenger level. So it became apparent to me that my skill set was really suited to the doubles. And then the final straw for me was Pat Galbraith and I just sort of out of nowhere won a Masters 1000 type tournament in Toronto. And all of a sudden, I got a whopping big check for me, 34,000. I still remember how much that was. And it was like, this is the life, Let's
Yes.
forget these $300 checks losing first round of the challenges. So from about 23 years old, I I realized that just financially it was responsible. I was had married, was starting family, and I was like, you've got to do the sensible thing here and focus on your doubles. So that's what I did.
And it worked out. What was your best result?
Well, Steve DeVries and I won Indian Wells back in 1992. So I'd say that was my perhaps favorite memory. I didn't quite get into the top 10. I maxed out at 11, which Sam Querrey and I so proudly, correct whenever we do exhibition or a coaching thing, that the people are trying to be nice to us. They say former top 10er or Sam Querrey, or former top 10er in doubles David Macpherson, and we proudly correct them. No, only 11, ma'am. Only 11, sir.
Sam Querrey, pick up, please, if you don't mind, David.
Oh, yes, Sam Querrey and I have the dubious distinction of both being top 11 players. He in singles, of course, and me in doubles. So we take great pride in correcting anyone that's nice enough to try and fudge us being a former top 10er. This happened at Forest Hills just last US Open. We did a Pro-Am type event, and the introducer just trying to say that we were both top 10ers, and we both put up our hands and said, we don't like to exaggerate. And we got stopped at 11.
It's actually quite funny, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because top 10 sort of has a ring about it, but if you can correct someone, go, no, not quite. Number 11.
Yeah, I
Still
never
really
do. It's a badge of honor for me. I mean, Johnny Mack was number 10 in the world the week I topped out at 11. So I didn't feel too bad because I was nowhere in his league. So he probably was top 10 with 4 tournaments on the computer to my 30.
Yeah. That's really good. Okay, so when did you get into coaching? How did that work?
Gosh, that was a bit of a little miracle. I did start a tennis academy back in Sarasota in 2002, 3, and 4, which I really enjoyed. It was great being with my family, and I look back fondly at those days. But then I ran back into Mike and Bob Bryan playing world team tennis on the same team for them, the Kansas City Explorers, the 2005 team. And they were our marquee players. They came in for a couple of nights. So I rode the pine while they came in and put on a display of doubles. But they were just actually looking for a coach at the time. And we sort of bonded, and we had played against each other 4 times on the tour. So they kind of knew me already. And their dad asked me on the flight the next day, would you do the summer, just a trial summer with Mike and Bob? And I was honored that they asked me, and so I accepted. And they were on a strange streak of losing 6 Grand Slam finals in a row. They'd won a French Open, I believe, in 03 or 04, but they made the finals of every Grand Slam that year in 2005, but lost them all. So the bar was certainly really high. And so you can imagine I was pretty darn nervous at that US Open of 2005, especially before the final. But yeah, we just must have just been meant to be, found the right words to say, and the boys just put on a sparkling display to win that final comfortably. And then we were off and running.
What did you change then? So they've lost these 5 finals. What was the catalyst to get them over the line in the next one?
Well, the opponents were Jonas Bjorkman and Max Mirny, and I really did have a really strong feeling of how to play that match tactically, being pretty good mates with Pat Rafter, who played so much with Jonas. I remember a conversation we had back in Halle, and we were just having a good time. And Paddy said, well, I wouldn't serve to his backhand once, if I was playing him. And so, honestly, to be perfectly honest, I took Pat's, offhanded comment, and that was our game plan for that particular day. We only served Jonas's backhand if it was 40 love. And then we did just to, try and limit him getting in a complete groove. But we were the boys were so relentless about going to the forehand, either forehand body or swing tee, every single point of that US Open final. If you want to watch it back, you'll only see them serving to the backhand at 40 love. And combined with just perhaps a fresh face, someone telling them that they can do it, we are going to do it. I remember just challenging them, whatever they bring, you bring more. Like it was sort of more of a football coach speech. And by God's grace, they ended up winning, and And then they were off and running. They had that belief that, hey, we can win Grand Slams, and then they started to win them at a regular clip.
He certainly did. Obviously, identical twins, Mike and Bob, but one was an inch taller, one was lefty. How different in personality were they?
Oh gosh, they were polar opposites. Yeah, they were amazing. Polar opposites in personality, but just so they would fight all the time. I mean, never a day went by, never a practice went by where it wasn't contentious. But a typical story of them that encapsulates their relationship. They were coming home from a Wimbledon, maybe 13-11 in the first round victory, where they really were lucky to escape and didn't play particularly well. And they were giving it to each other in the transport car. The poor lady driver, I was in the front, they were in the back. And she was mortified probably at what was being said in the back seat. And then there was scuffling in the back. You know, one of them whacked each other in the head, and it was on. And when we finally got to our little Wimbledon house, I believe it was Bob got straight into the boot, and he pulled out Mike's guitar and broke it in two pieces over his leg, and then proceeded to race into the house and lock Mike out before he could chase him. It was just, oh my goodness, it was quite, the poor driver, she probably remembers it to this day. But I say that, and honestly, I swear, within 20 minutes, we're playing Risk or Monopoly or whatever the board game was, with the girlfriends and everything, and it's like a storm that had passed over. And that's the way they were. They would really give it to each other on the court when they didn't think that the other one was holding up their end of the bargain on any given day. But then the storm would pass, and then they were just the best of mates again within minutes.
I've actually heard this story because I think they recounted it on the Andy Roddick podcast. And I believe after the guitar was smashed, one of them smacked the other one in the face. I think there was more to that happened. I don't know if you were there as well, but that just makes me laugh so much.
Oh gosh, yeah, and then there's so many stories. We need a Netflix series for it, not one podcast, Candy.
Well, you might be getting one, because I bet there's just absolute diamonds in there. Absolutely brilliant, David. So after that, well, let's stay with the Bryan brothers quickly. What do you think was your best moment with them?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was just so incredibly proud of their courage to win the Olympic gold at Wimbledon after they'd 4 years previously been upset in the semis by Stan and Roger. That was a really painful loss, because in Mike and Bob, in my eyes, they were the favorites. Doubles is our game, and they'd always had a very, very strong record against Rafa, Roger, any of the top singles players. They rarely lost a match to a great singles player. So that really, really hurt. They were able to recover and win the bronze medal in Beijing. But when they were able to just come up big, because that was their goal for years before, like when the Olympics rolls around again, we want to atone for that loss and win the gold. So to have all that expectation or just desire to come and play such a great final against Tsonga and Lodra, to win that's perhaps as proud of them as I've ever been.
Oh, it must be just the most enormous high. Is it a bit like a rock star? And I'll never know what the feeling's like, but to win an Olympic gold medal, the feeling of that, and just being associated as you were, must be the biggest high of them all. And it's probably something you can never really replicate in life. And I suppose that's why a lot of rock stars turn to drugs, isn't it? Where tennis players, I suppose, turn to the next match and hope they can get that feeling again.
Yes, I always, with the big tournaments, especially that one, there was an overwhelming sense of relief, perhaps just as powerful or even more powerful than the elation. Obviously, I would think that they would probably echo that sentiment. Obviously, they're the ones doing. So they must have elation when they win that match point. Just the chest bump probably went through the sky. It was probably the highest chest bump that they've ever done. And the elation must have just been just so incredibly powerful. But the sense of relief that I think that number one players, great players, feel when it's all over and it's mission accomplished, and we can just, for at least a little moment in time, breathe and just say we did it. That that's a powerful emotion too, I think, for great champions, and that's how I think Mike and Bob often felt when they were able to win a Grand Slam, especially win that Olympic gold, or win a Davis Cup, those types of things. It's elation, but then quickly followed by gratitude and relief.
Did you have some epic celebrations afterwards? Is there anything you can recount for us that would be quite
Oh
funny?
God. For the most part, we just had a nice dinner with friends and family. I don't remember that they weren't the type to drink or go in deep into the night. I think we tried to bluff it as cool characters. One Australian Open, when Serena invited us out to her after party because she would always win the singles Saturday afternoon and the boys would win the doubles Saturday night. So there were many Bryan Brothers Serena doubles, and we went out with her team one night to a nightclub, and I remember us all feeling a bit out of place. We're not cool enough for this, so I really
Presume there was
don't
karaoke,
remember
because I think
too much.
the Williams sisters love karaoke, don't they?
Yeah, like we probably didn't stay late enough to hear him sing, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it was just that amazing sense for me at the Australian Open. It was always that blessed feeling of knowing I was going to Tasmania the next morning and getting to play golf with my dad, and just sort of
Yes.
also my little letdown, my little relief as a coach, where I could just put it all behind me for a few days at least. That's my sort of the Australian Open titles. That's what I remember quite vividly.
Yeah, that must be a lovely way to enjoy it with your family, and really, because I think obviously the players get all the plaudits, the coaches in the background, but for you that is an immense achievement. So congratulations. So after working with the Bryan brothers, how long did you take before you started working with John Isner?
Oh gosh, well, after 15 years with Mike and Bob, I sort of perhaps hit the wall a little bit. I'd met um, a lovely girl that lived in Washington. And so I sort of stepped away from the tour for a fraction to become a college coach at George Washington University. It wasn't really me, and I wasn't particularly happy in the college coaching world. But to be with Jackie, I was happy, just, and it was a nice
You
sort of
sacrificed.
step away from the tour. Yeah, exactly. So they were really, really happy times. Uh, but then John and I we were great friends, John and I, before I ever coached him. Justin Gimelstob, another great friend of mine, was coaching him, and he was going through a lot from memory. So John needed a new coach, and all the bonding we did at Davis Cup ties, I think, and he saw me working with Mike and Bob. Obviously, he was like, I think Macca and I could make a good team. So he brought me on as one of his coaches in 2017. Perhaps it was a joint effort with Justin and Renee Mola. And then by
Okay.
2018, I guess I became maybe his more primary coach. And then we had 5 or 6 great years together.
And what was the highlight of working with John, and how well did you two get on together?
Oh gosh, we got on famously. We had so much in common. We love our sports. Oh gosh, we love our sports. So we're always talking about the hockey or the football or something. And he even, has an Australian rules football team. He followed the Fremantle Dockers, so I could even talk footy, Aussie footy to him. So, we were just peas in a
Oh,
pod. John.
amazing.
Yeah. And he has such a
Yeah.
wonderful family, and just like Bob and Mike before them, I used to get great pleasure out of sort of playing Uncle Macca, to Bob's children when they were young, and then that was also the case with John's family when he started his family with Maddie. That it was just really nice to sort of be the Manny at times, not
I love
the
that.
coach, but I was the Manny.
Macca
Who
and
took
Manny
them to their
in
yeah,
one.
Macca, coach and Manny, take them to their first movies, things like that, taking them for walks, like great memories with the little kids. So it was really nice with both Bob and John's children.
Because and when we speak with Mark Gellard, the coach of Magdalenette, it is so much of a family thing. You have to really like that person, don't you? Because the amount of time you spend with them, it's not just coach player. It's essentially brother, sister, lover in some cases. I mean, you've just got everything rolled into one. It's an absolutely bonkers relationship because of all the highs and the lows and the traveling. You're living out of each other's pockets. You're eating with that person. Sometimes when you're younger, you're staying in a room with them. In the case of Mazzetti and Tartarini, and it's all just weird. So how do you navigate that?
Oh gosh, well, I suppose that the trickiest thing is just the rawness of what a defeat feels like, and the players that the pain that they suffer, uh, and the way to somehow navigate through that. And of course, Mike and Bob, you would think that they didn't do much losing, and they didn't in a way. But when they did lose, it was very, very painful because of the expectations. And John was also a top player, the number one American for so long. So to be able to, as a coach, to be able to navigate through those raw emotions that happen after matches, that takes some doing. Um, I suppose that was a strength of mine to help them navigate through that and say the right things or not say the wrong things sometimes. Uh, so you're able to endure the losses and then move forward and try to correct the mistakes of the past. So I suppose that's sort of a prerequisite for a good coach. You need to be able to handle the rawness of defeat.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is you need to pull the player away from the situation sometimes, because I think as all tennis players, no matter what level you play, everything is done in microscopic detail, particularly when the losses happen. And sometimes you need to look at sort of at the broad picture, don't you, at how well this player is doing. And there's always another opportunity around the corner, but it's hard to sometimes keep that perspective as a player. So that's where the coach really comes in.
Yes, it really is quite a challenge because we're just it's one player, one coach. It's such a personal situation. There's always next week mentality, which it helps. Normally, it just takes a day or two, perhaps, to
Or
get
two.
over the defeat. And you've got something tangible, something new to aim for, to try and win next week's tournament or the next Grand Slam. So that is the way you have to approach it. And you also should be approaching things, especially right now with Lee too, I'm working with and having such a great time working with him. We're very much focused on just him evolving and improving as a player, knowing that if we focus on that process, the good things are going to happen. You not get so caught up in each individual week, but we want to feel like we're growing. We want to feel like we're
Yes.
learning, so that the ultimately 6 months, 12 months from now, I'm a much better player than I was right now.
Yeah, very good. Going back to John Isner, and I'd love to speak to you about Lee too, because he is one of the most amazing stories in the world of tennis. As we speak with Dave Macpherson on Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach, how with John Isner did you work out the physical aspect? Because of course, being almost 7 foot tall, getting him on the court was probably the toughest trick. When he was on the court, you knew he was going to be fine, given how well he played.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, John was such a professional in every way, uh, especially with his body. He had an amazing discipline with his stretching, with his gym work. He brought his chiropractor Clint on the road with him, and they would spend hours putting him back together again, and putting Humpty Dumpty back together again after an epic match. And so he takes all the credit for that. He was such a pro about taking care of his body, and then he played a pretty graceful style. Obviously, his service motion was pure poetry, and a lot of the
Yes.
points were very short and sweet from our standpoint, because his serve plus one was, or his serve volley was so lethal. And then we did encourage him to return aggressively, let out on the forehand whenever he got an opportunity. We didn't want to get, as we say, engaged in a ground war with a lot of these other top players. So we tried to play intelligently, as well as his remarkable work ethic, and that was the secret to his longevity. He had 10 years in the top 20, I do believe. So for a
It's
7 footer,
unbelievable.
that's really something that I know he's very proud of, and he should be.
Yeah, I can imagine. Were you with him when he played that Wimbledon match against Nicola Mahut?
No, I was coaching Mike and Bob at that point, and Mike and Bob,
Okay.
ironically, were following him on the very first day of play.
Oh,
Mike and Bob were the next match on, so we were in the locker room, fired up, ready to go, doing it. Mike's doing his calisthenics, and well, I'm going over the game plan, etc., etc., and it never happened. Mercifully, they moved the Bryans to a different court on day 2 of that encounter, so we didn't have to wait for Isner Mahout again. But I was coaching him for his almost as epic semi-final with Kevin Anderson, which was
oh yes.
26-24 in the fifth, and changed the course of history, Wimbledon history, because after that match, the very next year switched to the 12-all tiebreaker. So I certainly have some concept of what it's like to go through a John Isner epic.
That's brilliant. Did you take any time then after working with John? John obviously retired. He's married with, I think, 4 children and possibly more coming. I think he's going for the football team, isn't he? Both the NFL and soccer.
Yes.
But now you're working with Lee Tu, who has the most remarkable story. How did you two get together?
Well, yes, it's been a couple of years. I've been doing a couple of different assignments, but Darren Cahill put us together. I was in Las Vegas coaching at a lovely academy called the No Quit Academy that does amazing things for the youth of Las Vegas, and I was just to let Darren know I was pretty keen to get back on the tour where I felt like I was most happy, most comfortable. And he said, "Yeah, well, let me get to work on that." And sure enough, a couple of months later, he put me together with Lee, and we had a great conversation over the phone. And I think we both had a really good feeling about each other. And I flew to Adelaide shortly afterwards, and we just got to work with his still, current Adelaide coach, Ben Milner, and we just formed a really tight bond right away, and we've just been having a grand old time so far in the first 3 months.
I had no idea that Darren Cahill was a matchmaker. I actually ball girled for Darren Cahill. He played in Great Britain for a bit with Jeremy Bates. They were on the same team in Surrey, and that was my club. So I was a ball girl. So I've been a big fan of Darren Cahill. Are you surprised at how good a coach he is?
Oh, not surprised at all. He was just such a fierce competitor as a player, smart, tough. I mean, that football background of his served him well. Like, he was so tough and so resilient. And then, in my mind, he's our coaching goat. If you want to assign a
Yeah,
title,
I think you're right.
coaching goat, what he's done in his coaching career. So just salt of the earth quality person. So he was a really good friend to me out in Las Vegas, and took the time to check in on me and see how I was doing. And it was a nice thing that he did put Lee and I together, who he knew from Adelaide because they're both South Australian fellas. And yeah, it's just meant to be, I suppose.
That is fantastic. It's annoying, isn't it, when people are that good at their job and also nice people as well. Well, it's not annoying; it's good, but you almost wonder how on earth they're doing all that stuff. Now, Lee too is the most amazing story. He was a fantastic junior, quit at the age of 18. He came back to the world of tennis at the at 24. Just fill in the gaps for us there, please.
Yes, well, I didn't know him then, but he's told me the story. He just sort of was a very good junior, like in the probably are in the similar age group as Kyrgios and Kokonakis, perhaps. So he has funny stories of playing them as a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old and what have you. But then, yeah, I guess he just lost his passion for the game, and just decided to give it up. And he and Ben, who I mentioned earlier, just created a little coaching business, a successful coaching academy business in Adelaide. And he was happy as a clam, I suppose, with Ben being part of that. But then when COVID hit, I guess an idea germinated in his brain. I'm going to get into shape and start playing these UTR tournaments and see if I can make a little bit of money and, use my abilities again. And of course, he did. He lost the weight, started playing well, won a whole slew of UTR matches, made some money. And then I suppose a graduate was like, well, holy moly, I mean, maybe I could still make it here at 25 years old and go back on the tour. And look at him now. He's all the way up to 170 or so, and just played a very good play. Yuri Lehechka at the Australian Open, a close 4-setter, got a set off Carlos Alcaraz at the US Open. So it's
Yes,
just quite a remarkable story.
it really is. And what do you like so much about him?
Well, he's a fun watch. I mean, he's a shot maker. He's got a very pretty one-handed backhand. I love his forehand. It's compact. It's pretty lethal. And we've worked really hard on his service motion in the last couple of months. So I felt just looking at it right away, and of course I've seen some great serves in my time, that he could improve the service fundamentals, the technique of that. So he was like a sponge. He really embraced the technical changes that we made right away to his serve, and he's starting to really spot serve now. Like, he can hit the four corners much better than before. So even though he doesn't serve in the 200 range yet, we're still trying to find some extra power, but he's starting to be more of a Federer type server, where he can hit the spots.
And how far do you think Lee can do now he's back to tennis? And is this going to be for a few years? Is he really going to focus on getting to the next level?
Yes. Well, I think, the sky's the limit. We feel like Lee's improving rapidly every day, and so yeah, we're certainly dreaming big. We feel like there's nothing that we don't think he can accomplish, but it's just match by match, day by day sort of mentality.
He played Jerzy Lehečka, didn't he, at this year's Australian Open? Lehečka, a very good player from the Czech Republic. What did you think of that match overall?
Yes, I was very proud of him. Lehečka's a very formidable opponent. Lee got off to a slow start, 6-1, but then sort of didn't panic. He just gathered his resources and ended up really being very, very, won the second set, had a big chance to win the fourth as well. So he he was right there with a fella in the top 30 in the world. So it gave us a lot of hope that we're on the right track, we're on the path. And while everyone is difficult, even when you go to the challenges, you can't just assume because you've played at a level that's top 30 that the challenges are going to be easy, because everybody's so
Yes.
good. But it does give us sort of a feeling of optimism that once we do get to that level, we're not outmatched here, and we are still improving.
And let's finally, because I know you've got to hit the golf course, Dave, and you've been very generous with your time. I'd love to know your philosophy on coaching for coaches that are listening and watching this podcast, and they're just sort of starting. Well, they've been coaching. They're obviously good players, but they've been coaching for a while. What would you tell them to get to the next level if they do want to start coaching on the professional tour?
Well, I think it's a very tricky business being a coach on the professional tour, because of the dynamic of the player essentially writing your paycheck. So I think the
Yeah.
art of being truthful, being honest, and giving the player real coaching, and finding a way to balance that with just supporting them and being there for them is the real key. Now, and of course you've got to know your stuff too. Like, obviously you've got to be a master of the tactical, the technical, and the psychology. So
Mm.
it's a three-pronged attack you've got to bring to the table. But what is the most difficult, I think, sometimes, is to be blunt and to be honest with your player and say, this isn't good enough, you need to
Yes.
improve, that shot needs improving, and risk perhaps losing your job, but for the greater good of the player. I think that's something that is not easy for a lot of coaches to do. Now, when you're in,
Yeah.
sorry, Darren Cahill's position, which hard earned, so many incredible clients that he's had, it's a little bit easier to be true to yourself. But for most coaches, it's a tight wire act.
I've had, having coached a lot of junior players, sort of between the ages of really 8 and 16, and some national, some international, are mostly girls. But I find sometimes the parents, particularly the dads, quite tricky. They want to be on court. They want to kind of dominate. Sometimes when everything's going fine, it's okay. But when things aren't, sometimes the parents come in. What would you do in that situation? Have you been in that situation before?
Yes, I have. Parents are obviously, in a way, they know best in some ways, because they've raised their children, so they do know so much about them that a new coach especially wouldn't know. But oftentimes it's to their detriment, where they won't let the coach make the necessary technical changes, or what's needed mentally to if they it's a common problem and a common challenge for a coach to navigate through the parental influence and to get them to trust you, and let go. Now Wayne Bryan and I had I thought, a very healthy relationship because he was obviously coached them himself for so long. He and Kathy taught them to play. So it was not easy for him to trust someone he didn't know to coach his boys in when they're in their early 20s. But we managed. Our communication was honest, and we had our moments. We had our moments, Wayne and I. But in general, he did a fantastic job of letting go and trusting Mike and Bob to let them choose someone, in that case me, be the one to deliver the information, to be there with them in the trenches, which was less pressure than playing for their dad or listening to their dad give them the game plan or go over the post-mortem of the losses and things. So it was a healthy decision that the family made to outsource to me, and it was Wayne did a fantastic job of communicating with me and giving me some insights with the boys without without stopping me from going with my instincts and letting me do what I do best.
I love that, the post-mortem of the losses. That's well, that says a lot in just a few words. Dave Macpherson, you've been an absolute rock star. It was a pleasure to sit next to you in the booth. I hope we will continue our friendship for many more years now, and all the best coaching Lee too. It's exciting to see where his playing journey goes.
We shall, Candy. Can't wait to our next assignment together. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dave, and good luck on the golf course. Quickly, how good of a golfer are you? Are you expecting a couple of birdies today?
Handy, but with a jabby putting stroke would describe me.
Okay, so are you sort of a scratch? Are you a scratch
Oh
golfer?
no, definitely not scratch. No, if I break 80, it'll be somewhat of a minor miracle, especially at Barnbougle. But hopefully, I can crack 90.
All right, brilliant. Well, we all wish you the best of luck. Dave, thanks very much again.
Okay, bye, Candy.